There once was a great king of Geats. His name was Beowulf, best warrior of the lands. He slayed Grendel when he slaughtered the healthy men of Heorot. Also, Grendel's mother, when she wanted her man price paid with blood. 15 winters after that fine tale, but 35 before Beowulf's final tale. This is a story that takes place in those intermediate years. One sweltering spring, while Beowulf sat on his throne, a day of taxes, a dreary day for many. Most chiefs of the villages contained by Beowulf came to offer tribute to Beowulf, but one didn't show. Jarlsberg. Annoyed with this, Beowulf asked his most trusted comrade, "Where is the chief of Jarlsberg?" The comrade said, with shy tone, "No one has communed with the chief of Jarlsberg. Now that I think, no one has last seen anyone from Jarlsberg all last winter or autumn. We sent some men there, but none have returned." Beowulf decided, as king, he should go there and find out what is happening in Jarlsberg. So Beowulf called him some of his best comrades. They were to go with him to Jarlsberg to find out what is going on. So Jarlsberg gathered 6 comrades to come with. They headed out off to their destination, Jarlsberg. Traveling to Jarlsberg, tiresome 4 miles away, the air carrying with it a soothing, sweet, somber tone, as a mother singing a lullaby to her sleeping baby. Beowulf sworn he heard the lullaby in the air, as though a bard sung it thoroughly right in front of his face. Farther as they traveled into the village, a very rushed man walking with weight passed Beowulf. Beowulf bopped the man's shoulder, saying, "Whereabouts is your chief?" The man stopped, stared daggers into Beowulf, like a bewildered boy stares into incoherent ramblings of his drunkard father. Dry was a tone spoken back to Beowulf by the man. He said, "We have never had any chiefs. None has had or had in all our history. Never had, nope." The Geat King gawked, saying, "Then whence comes the tributes? They have always been brought in person. Who was it then that was representing Jarlsberg?" With eyes screaming in sorrow, sharply the man moved his hands, pressing them hard to his temples, like a warrior stabbing a spear into the lungs of a dead, downed enemy warrior. Deadpan, the man said, "You are right. Our chief gives you tribute. But we don't have a chief, so we didn't bring tributes. But we did." Wet life ichor began to drip from his temples, where his fingers rest. They were forced deep into his temples, like an arrow into a leather shield. Hastily, he hurried to excuse himself, citing his head injury must be cared to. Heading to intercept the man, Beowulf stopped suddenly. He thought carefully, then began thinking, "The character of that man was clouded most likely by mead. Don't attack a drunk man, you'd be abusing an absent man." Marching on through Jarlsberg, Beowulf and comrades came upon a beautiful throne hall in the middle of Jarlsberg. It was well built, but Beowulf thought, "The man said Jarlsberg had no chief." No, the man said they had no chief. Never had any chiefs, the man said. Then I suppose what could this throne hall be for? The weapons carried by Beowulf and comrades were placed in front of the throne hall opening. Grendel Slayer gingerly opened the door to the throne hall. Entering the throne hall, tracks laid on the floor in front of the door. Beowulf gazed at the tracks. As he gazed at the animal tracks, he realized readily that they were scratch marks. Scratch marks told the story of a terrible struggle. Beowulf looked around the throne hall like a sentry scanning out from his high-perched wall perch. Like a fog covering fleets of ships, the throne hall was blanketed with a choking, cough-inducing dust. It was on the tables and torch stands. It was on the mead, and the master's chair. Beowulf began to think, why was the mead and table set? Seems as though the throne hall was being used, but not recently. If it was recently, then why was the mead stale and the meat rotting? It made Beowulf wonder more. It appeared like everyone just left. After all leaving with a rush, the scene set before him, rotting meat, stale mead, and set tables. Beowulf made an about face. leaving the foggy dreamscape behind. Grabbing his weapon, Grendelslayer and company left. Outside the throne hall, Beowulf and comrades began walking through Jarlsberg, until they found a mead hall. Beowulf and comrades rejoiced at finding a resting place. Thus, Beowulf and company made their way into the mead hall. Like a hunter coming home from a hunt, Beowulf and comrades entered the mead hall. Inside were many people. Some were sporting lively stories, some were talking with joyful words, and some were eating eagerly enticing foods. Beowulf sits at one of the big tables, eating and drinking like a drunkard who is suffering a hangover. A man stalks over to Beowulf, sitting beside him. As both men eat, the man asks Beowulf, "What has brought you here, King of Geats?" Beowulf says, "This village hasn't paid their tribute. I come tremendous miles to find out why. Your chieftain hasn't paid. Worse, I can't find him." The man says his name is Siegfried. How they haven't had a chief? How he hopes Beowulf finds what he seeks. Then Siegfried calls out, "A lovely wife, come fill the King of Geats' cup with mead." A woman with clothes of drab comes over, finally filling Beowulf's cup. Siegfried and the men of the mead hall eat and drink, until a drunkard asks of deeds of heroism from Beowulf. Hearing this as a time to boast, Beowulf begins to recount a tale of the mead hall. He says, "Many moons ago, a shadow stalker slayed all the men of Herat. The beast killed until I slayed the hell beast with hands laced without weapons. I ripped one of its arms off. Clambering away, the beast died. Soon after, his mother came looking for a man price. Soon I had to slay the horror of Herat's mother. She laid under a lake. I, with chain armor, sank to the bottom and slayed the mother of a monster with her own sword. Soon I brought her head back, thus saving the men of the hall of Herat from the monster and his mother." After the tale, Beowulf and the rest of the table set to drinking and sleeping. All was quiet at the mead hall, where most men slept. Awakening from a mead-fueled slumber, the Geat King gazes over the hall, finds 5 of his comrades. Beowulf thinks, "Here lay his 5 comrades. But wait, wasn't there 6? Frantically, Beowulf runs like a man on fire, searching for his 6th comrade. Somewhere he be, thought Beowulf. Somewhere he be. Inside he looks, outside he looks, around the town he looks. He wakes the sleeping Siegfried. When Beowulf tells him of his woe, Siegfried, with gingered voice, says, But Beowulf, when you came here yesterday, you brought with you 5 men. Beowulf, I know not how you came to the number 6 comrades, but you only had 5. Hearing this, Beowulf said, No, I tell you 6, not 5, 6. I think 6. As Beowulf begins to count in his mind the number of comrades, counting them became fuzzy. The Geat King froze. Gingerly he said, 6. No, 5? I missed the facts. You speak truth, Siegfried. I have only 5 comrades brought with me. Beowulf, like a man who just learned his manson's death, stood there in the hall. Siegfried spoke. Oh, Beowulf, you need not be sorry. Brunhilde, fetch a fast cup of mead for Beowulf. It would help the Geat King greatly with his mind. When Brunhilde returned, Beowulf drank the mead like a sailor who is dehydrated from the sea. Beowulf thinks how he could be so delirious in thinking that he had brought 6 men. He brought 5 comrades with him. Counting them again in his head, he brought only 5. But someone mentioned what he thought? What though? Beowulf thought the mead was getting to him. The Geat King brought 5 comrades, not any other number. Not this 6, no. Only 5. Firstly, a few hours later, Beowulf and comrades went searching through the village for strange happenings, such as the one he had just experienced, since Beowulf was now sure something strange laid afoot in this village. For Beowulf knew he brought 5 men, but he couldn't shake in his mind that Something strange was wrong with Jarlsberg. Beowulf and comrades came to an old man. He was cutting wood while his family lay in his house. The comrades talked to his family, while Beowulf to the old man. Beowulf speaks to the old man, saying, "I am the great Geek King, great old man. What can you tell me of this Jarlsberg?" Just as Beowulf finished, the old man said with sweet tone, "My name is Dragon. This village's throne was filled by Broga. Now his son, Bryce, is chief. I tell you, our throne has never been filled with a chief." Beowulf moved swiftly to speak, to confront this contradiction. Geek goes to ask Dragon how this can be, but before Beowulf can utter a word, he is whisked away by one of his comrades, calmly asking if Beowulf could speak to Dragon's son, Durlwin. The Geek King goes to talk with Durlwin, for there is a little reasoning with a lively old man. Geek King and comrades go inside the house. Beowulf talks to Durlwin, asking him who his father is. Durlwin, with nervous breath, "My father's age is high. He still is. A great warrior of all he was, when he wore a younger man's helmet. Dragon went walking to the wide road. On his way there, while traveling, a huge, hungry bear came upon him. He pulled out his spear, preparing to slay the hunter of bees. But as the hungry bear lunged, just then a scream sounding like banshee, mixed with a horse, whisked along to the ears of Beowulf. Bounding like a hare running from a hunter, Beowulf rambunctiously ran outside the house. No one was there. Not a single soul. Only an axe on a chopping stump, strewn to the side. The axe laid on the side of the stump. Suddenly, one of Beowulf's comrades says with concerned voice, "Great Geek King, weren't you talking with an old man?" Beowulf thinks, "I was, wasn't I? There was an old man. I think so." Durlwin, with voice unsure, then says, "My father Durlwin died many winters ago. He no longer lives." Beowulf says with anger, "Whose axe is that? A few times ago you said your father lives. Why then did you say different?" Durlwin, in frantic voice, says, "I know not how your comrade to be outside, Beowulf, but that axe belongs to one of them, most likely." Then, with blood boiling, Grendel Slayer goes to shout at the sun, then stops, for Beowulf saw in the sun's eyes were screaming fear. Beowulf knew Durlwin's fear and made him tell truths. Beowulf and the gang leave the property, going back to the mead hall to drink, for the mighty Beowulf said, "I need a drink to clear a drowsy head." Beowulf and comrade began eating and drinking at the hall. Soon all of the mighty men go to slumber. When Beowulf wakes up, he sees that another comrade is gone. Carefully, Grendel Slayer counts his comrades again. He has 4, but he remembers 5. No, 4. Beowulf thinks... No, he remembers bringing only 4 comrades with him on his journey to Jarlsberg. Beowulf speaks to Siegfried again. "Siegfried, bring your wife. Ask her to bring some cups for mead." Siegfried interjects back to Beowulf. "What wife do you speak of? Since when have I had a wife?" Beowulf, with berating tone, "She got me the mead from the past few days." Siegfried speaks of how he got the mead for Beowulf. Grendel Slayer, in demanding tone, "Take me to your home. I'll show you how your wife does." Thus Siegfried brought Beowulf to his home. Beowulf points at women's clothes in a washing basket. Siegfried says those are his sister's clothes. Beowulf counters with, "Where is his sister?" Siegfried says, "She must be out about the village." Geek King then grabs Siegfried and brings him outside, saying, "We will search the entire village until we find her." Searching all over, finding only some words scratched on a clothesline with some old strewn up clothes on it. Here lay the words written on it, "Help, they're eating us." Siegfried says he knows nothing about the words, or how whence they were placed there. Dusk rolled around. Siegfried asked Beowulf if they could slumber and speak of this tomorrow. Beowulf agrees. Siegfried spins around, returning home. The great Geek King goes to the mead hall to sleep as well. Beowulf wakes up, discovering words dug into the table. They were right in front of where he found his sleeping spot. The words read, "It's always watching us. Beowulf, now thoroughly thrown into a panic. First the words from yesterday, now the words found today. Grendel Slayer thinks, what is going on in this village? Beowulf heads outside, setting himself to wake up Siegfried. Beowulf tells Siegfried about the words scratched onto the table. Beowulf and Siegfried investigate the scratches. They realize the scratches came from a sleeping Beowulf, because Beowulf had wood under his fingernails. The Geek King goes to his comrades and asks, has any strange things happened last night? The 4 comrades said they knew nothing last night. They didn't see anything. But one comrade asked Beowulf, whose spear and shield are at the door of the hall. There are 7 sets of spears and shields, but only 5 men. 4 comrades and Beowulf. Comrades, Beowulf and Siegfried scour their minds, while also asking each other who those items belong to. Beowulf thinks hard. He vaguely remembers 2 people coming with them. They weren't his comrades. Their day was filled by that question, thinking about it all during that day. The Geek King gets up the next day and wanders around the village. Beowulf now wonders what is going on in this village. Where is their chief? They must have one, I think. Beowulf sees a series of candles around a shrine, but there are only 3 of the 9 candles are lit. Near one of the lit candles there are drag marks. They come from the shrine going out about 20 feet. Grendel Slayer ponders this, and his mind comes to the gods. When the gods have woes, take action, take their minds off it. The Geek King goes to Siegfried's home, then to the mead hall, making sure he wakes their occupants up, telling them they shall have a stone throwing competition. All agree, thus all head outside. The comrades went first, then came Siegfried. When it came to Siegfried's turn, he wound up his arm, throwing the stone. Through the air the stone went. Beowulf watched the stone as it went flying. Then suddenly, Beowulf saw the stone hit something. It was invisible, but round like Rowan's. Tall like a cedar, that invisible thing was hit by the stone. Beowulf asked Siegfried what he hit, but Siegfried said, I didn't hit anything. Beowulf asked Siegfried to throw the stone again. Siegfried threw the stone, again hitting the invisible adder tree. Again, Siegfried says he didn't hit anything. Beowulf said, Fine, I'll show you, Siegfried. Beowulf threw the stone just like Siegfried. Again the stone hit the invisible adder. Shocked, Siegfried finally saw the stone hit the thing. But a gawking Grendel Slayer didn't see the stone hit. Wondering if the invisible thing was, or does, belongs to the strangeness of this village, Beowulf comes up with an idea. They each man group up with another man, arm them with spears and torches, for the dusk was coming close soon, then go searching for more invisible things. Beowulf then explains this to the men. Since each man individually can't see if they're hitting anything, but someone else can see it, we must watch each other's spears to see if they hit anything. Thus the comrades group into twos, and Beowulf and Siegfried grouped. Beowulf, Siegfried, and comrades methodically began going through the village. Each group of comrades found round, Rowan-like things. Siegfried and Beowulf found an invisible tree as well, but this tree towered over them, like the largest cedars. The comrades' finds paled in comparison to Beowulf and Siegfried's find. Beginning to circle around, Beowulf taps around the tree, but begins to hear death screams. Making an about face, Beowulf begins searching for his comrades, being unable to find them. Beowulf gets only more worried when he can't find the villagers. They couldn't have gone far, thought Beowulf, but they couldn't be found. Failing that, Beowulf begins to return to Siegfried, but as Beowulf rounds the corner, suddenly a man's head comes out of nowhere, biting at Siegfried. Lunging at the head held on a long arm, Beowulf rips the head with his hands off of Siegfried. Like melting snow, Siegfried begins to bleed in the leg. But Beowulf notices now where the big cedar was, there is now a large torso. The terror of this village, the blight of Jarlsberg, has unveiled itself to Beowulf. The sweet, somber song stops. Beowulf can hear dead quiet. like the darkness of the setting sun. The air was no longer filled by the lullaby of the monster. As soon as the lullaby stopped, Beowulf felt his mind clear. Like dust being thrown off an old book, Beowulf had clarity. How long this would last, Beowulf didn't know. But Beowulf knew he had to slay that massive monster before it slayed him, or Siegfried. With clear head, Beowulf could see the monster. Its body was bloated like a dead, degenerating corpse. Its neck was swiftly serpentine in length. Its skin was a pale, white, blood-soaked hue. Beowulf could see the trees the comrades found. Parts of the monster, they penetrated through the village. Counting them out, Beowulf found 40 of them, each a serpentine neck, situated at their tops or heads. The faces on the necks mirrored the monster's face. Their bottom jaws, long, protruding, bared swords, with no lips covering, hanging like icicles in the winter. Black, pupilless irises, soulless eyes, like bottomless, wet black cavities. Hanging hungrily, the monster's eyes salivated at Beowulf. A head lunges at Beowulf. Beowulf thrusts his spear, hitting it, knocking it, and Beowulf back 9 feet. As Beowulf lands, another head attacks. Beowulf dodges right, dropping his torch and spear. Grabbing the head with his bare hands, immediately Beowulf tries to tear apart the head. But Beowulf is stopped by an assault from behind. Beowulf lets go, punching the other head, breaking its jaw. A sharp pain, like a sword slashing in the flesh. Beowulf's knee got hit. The head lifts him into the air. Another head sneaks up behind Beowulf. Being swarmed like bees to honey, the heads were trying to execute him via quartering. Just as hope began to be lost for Beowulf, Siegfried began piercing the heads, saving Beowulf. With the heads dying, Beowulf dropped free. Beowulf thinks how he can defeat this behemoth. Then he remembers the towering torso. Beowulf then asks Siegfried, "Can you handle yourself for a couple of minutes?" Siegfried, in wispy breath, says, "For a few. Not any longer. For my leg still bleeds." Thus Beowulf runs at the towering torso of the monster. Beowulf sprints at the torso, dodging heads along the way. Beowulf lunges through the air at the torso, like a lynx pouncing. The head bites his arm. Beowulf begins wrestling with the head, slamming, throwing, and slicing it with nails. Beowulf beats on the monster. Heads try to assault Beowulf, but Siegfried stops them with his spear. Beowulf sticks his fingers into the monster's eye slots, forcing its head to rear back. Beowulf then grabs, pulling on its jaw. A jagged snap like a tree falling. Tremors through Jarlsberg. Beowulf rips the monster's face in two. The head begins to reshape. Beowulf, enraged, bites at the wound, stopping it from reforming. But soon, the head regrows. It just keeps regrowing, no matter how long the King of Geats bites. Suddenly, Siegfried fails to stop one of the heads as it rushes for Beowulf. Siegfried throws his torch at Beowulf, shouting to grab it. Beowulf, like a professional spear thrower, grabs the torch, smashing it into the head, suddenly killing it. The head, now almost reformed, gets ripped again by Beowulf. Beowulf bites and hits the gash with the torch. Beowulf sees the head stop regrowing where the torch hit it. Now knowing, Beowulf only hits the stump with the torch until it dies. As the main head dies, suddenly all the other heads scream in pain, going bolts of thunder at the Geat King. Beowulf runs over to Siegfried, picking him up and hurriedly saying, I have a plan. If we hurry, we can make it to the mead hall. We'll lure them inside, then burn the place." Siegfried agrees, saying he'll light the fire. Beowulf can hold them off. Like the fringes of hell were at their feet, Beowulf and Siegfried sprinted to the mead hall. As Beowulf, with Siegfried in arms, sprinted away, the ground beneath Beowulf's feet shook as though an earth tremor was upon them. The two didn't dare look behind them. They made it to the mead hall, with Monster close in tow. Leaping into the hall, Siegfried starts on spraying the fire, while Beowulf begins to defend him. Siegfried's fire spreads through the hall, heads bash in from the left, the right, top, bottom. They invade the meat hall. Beowulf throws many punches, Beowulf's first fist knocking invading heads into the fire. Each hit kills a head. Each head screams death. The meat hall sounds of a slaughterhouse. As the hall burns down, Siegfried and Beowulf run outside, searching around all for the signs of the monster. All they can find are the charred heads of the monster, its fat body bigger than a mountain. The cedar size Siegfried first saw was only a tiny tip of the true size of the monster. Its true size towered over Jarlsberg. It was huge, but Beowulf didn't care. All he thought was, finally, it was killed. The false Hydra was slain. Beowulf and Siegfried searched for survivors. Beowulf and Siegfried investigated everywhere, but found none. The monster murdered all the villagers of Jarlsberg. With quest completed, Beowulf wondered to himself, Did we win? I came here for taxes. Now this village is gone. No one is left. Except Siegfried. As soon as he thought this, Siegfried asked Beowulf, Splendid King of Geats, I humbly ask my new home with the Geats, for my old home isn't safe any longer. Shaking his head, Beowulf said with joy, Siegfried, you needn't be so full. What you did here today, I dare not reward you with any less. In fact, I shall reward you, Siegfried, with more than home. When we get back to Geatland, you shall be rewarded with gold. I, Geat King, swear on that. As Beowulf and Siegfried traveled out of Jarlsberg, Beowulf thought, if only for a moment, he heard a sweet, somber song.